You need to make a stiff sourdough starter right now. Okay, well, not right now, but soon, because once you do, it's going to open the door to a ton of amazing sourdough recipes. Some popular examples include sourdough baguettes, sourdough croissants, sourdough dinner rolls, and even sourdough pizza. And you might be wondering, does this mean that I have to start completely over with my starter like I did with my original and wait like a week for it to be finished? The answer is no. It's much easier than that. Let me start off by explaining what a stiff sourdough starter is. Well, just like with sourdough bread, where we can increase or decrease the hydration level to affect the texture and the flavor of the final outcome, we can do the same with our sourdough starter. And it opens up a wide array of new recipes for us when we do. A regular sourdough starter has a 100% hydration level, which means that for every 100 grams of flour, you're going to have 100 grams or milliliters of water. A stiff starter, on the other hand, is a 50% hydration level, meaning for every 100 grams of flour you have, 50 grams will be water. A stiff sourdough starter increases the flavor complexity and depth of your final product through reduced acidity. It also increases dough strength, which helps create a stronger gluten network, which is crucial when you're starting to work with recipes that are incorporated in fats and sugar, such as brioche or croissants. And last but not least, it increases the yeast activity, which is really beneficial for when you have these quicker recipes. And one of the best parts about this is that you can use your existing sourdough starter to build this stiff starter on occasion when you have a recipe that calls for it. You don't have to maintain that separately. You certainly can, but you don't have to. So that makes it very easy to make one of these. Okay, so now that I've explained what that is, let me show you how to make it. All right, so here we are. I've got everything I need to make a stiff sourdough starter. And the most important thing to me is my regular sourdough starter. This is my 100% sourdough starter, and I'm going to use that to make my stiff sourdough starter. What I have here is a food scale, very crucial. It's very important to measure your ingredients so you can be exact. And all I'm going to do is zero out my scale. And if you don't have another mason jar or another container that you would normally use for your sourdough starter, you can just use a water cup. It can be really anything because if you're like me, I just make a stiff starter on occasion when I'm wanting to make a specific recipe. So I'm going to use this mason jar here, and I'm going to start with 25 grams of my regular sourdough starter. Perfect. The next thing I want to add is my flour. So here's my jar of flour. I'm going to add 50 grams of flour. All right, one more gram. There we go. And the last thing I need is 25 grams of warm water. Perfect. All right. So with those ingredients together, that's a 50% hydration starter. Now you can increase the volume of this based off what you want for your recipe. Just like sourdough bread, where we want to use 20% of the flour's weight with starter. Um, it's similar with a stiff starter and recipe. You want to use between 15 and 20% of the flour's weight. So here's where it's a little bit different than your typical starter. So you can see as I'm mixing it up here, it's very dry. Whereas with our regular starter, everything kind of integrates together more easily. So what you want to do with a stiff starter is actually dump it out once it's mostly integrated, and then you just want to give it a little knead. And not much, I mean, just a little bit, just enough to get it together. And form it into, once you've kind of pressed it out and kneaded it and done a little fold here and there, you're going to have this chunk of dough. And this is your stiff starter. Now, what we're going to do is just put it right back in there. So we'll put our cover on that, set it aside. If you're using just a kitchen glass, just toss it in there and put a towel over it or whatever you have around to just keep it from air exposure. And now we just have to wait. It takes about 6 to 12 hours for this to peak. So let's check back on this in a little bit. All right, so it's been about 8 hours since we made that stiff sourdough starter together. I wanted to check in on it and show you what it looks like when it's peaked. But first, I just want to say, if you like the content in this video, please give me a thumbs up, maybe even subscribe. It really helps my small channel out a lot. So here's the peaked stiff starter after about 8 hours. You can see there's quite a lot of air bubbles in there. It doesn't rise up as much as a regular starter would, but you can see that there's lots of air bubbles around on the bottom. This is a sign that it's ready to go. So when you actually use it, it's not going to be like your regular starter where you can just pour it in. It's still very dry. What you want to do is when your recipe is calling for it, you can just simply get it out of your jar or whatever you have it stored in and break it up and drop the pieces into your mixing bowl. And then, mix that together, knead it in, and it will work just great. So that's a stiff sourdough starter. I'm going to have a few video recipes coming up where we use this, such as sourdough baguettes, sourdough croissants, sourdough dinner rolls. So stay tuned for that. So if you have any questions at all about this, feel free to leave a comment and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Happy to answer any questions you have or send me an email. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Bye.